Today I will be talking about structural unemployment in the United States. Globalization has accelerated since the early 20th century. Constant trade among countries has created a globalized market for the U.S. economy. The Treaty of Paris in 1951 and the Treaty of Rome in 1957 has further stabilized the diplomatic and economic development in Europe, expanding an international market for worldwide consumers. However, globalization has also caused other side effects. This includes causing structural unemployment in the United States. Globalization has allowed further economic freedom for companies across countries. Manufacturing countries have left America, moving factories to such less developed countries for cheaper labor. The decrease in factories left a sector of U.S. workers unemployed, which leads to structural unemployment. According to an article by The Atlantic, 50 years ago, the four most valuable U.S. companies has employed an average of 430,000 people with an average market cap of 180 billion. And today, the largest U.S. companies have about twice the market cap of their 1964 counterparts with only 1/4 of their employees. Structural unemployment in the United States also intensified the wealth inequality. As the average income rose due to globalization, inequality within countries rose along the way as structural unemployment takes place. According to trends in the distribution of household income by the Congressional Budget Office, between 1979 and 2007, it is found that the average after real household income of the top 1% has rose at least 275%, while the bottom quintile has only rose 18% during the same period. The globalization has negatively affected U.S. workers and inflated long-term dilemmas in the U.S. As work is a really important element in the American society, in the report of A World Without Work, economist Derek Thompson has stated that the sanctity and permanence of work lie at the heart of the country's politics, economics, and social interactions. Former President Richard Nixon also stated work ethic as part of the American culture in a speech during Labor Day. As structural unemployment takes place, a solution is needed to reduce the damaging issue and support the American workforce. This leads to my research question. Should government spending be the solution to reduce structural unemployment caused by globalization in the United States? Job creation is an important element for the U.S. employment rate. From the data collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Business Employment Dynamics, lower job creation accounts for 65% of the recession's decreased employment. A decrease of desire in private investments within the U.S. leads to a shrink in job creation. In addition to the changes in economic and political conditions, investments are discouraged, and therefore, private investments within the country decrease, pulling down the hiring of American workers along the way. Solutions to reduce the damage have been heatedly discussed. Some believe that government spending is the most effective method to create jobs directly. From the book, Concrete Economics, The Hamilton Approach to Economic Growth and Policy, Stephen S. Cohen and J. Bradhen DeLong pointed that the large and unappreciated role of government played in reshaping American economy in the past, which the government can definitely make the same impact on the economy again. During the 19th and 20th centuries, government has played an essential role in job creation. This includes the Hoover Dam investments in the 1930s, federal spending from 1930 to 1945 on the military-industrial complex to fight Germany and Japan, and other large projects by the government. These government investments require workers within the country, directly creating jobs for U.S. workers. In 2007, $1 billion in federal highway expenditures supported about 30,000 jobs, 10,000 in construction, 4,000 in supporting industries, and 50,000 in induced employment. As the U.S. government spends on investments such as infrastructure, a demand on workers is created, directly opening up job opportunities for U.S. workers and allowing workers who lost their jobs to globalization to work again. However, solely relying on government spending to create jobs does not reduce structural unemployment in the U.S. It yet leads to further unemployment. According to the data collected by the Forbes, the annual federal spending net interest has increased by $530 billion, or 19% since 2008. Yet, even with February's welcome gain of 192,000 jobs, there are 2.3 million fewer people employed today than in February 2009, the month before Obama administration turned on the spending spigots with the passage of its economic recovery plan. This phenomenon is directly related to the source of government spending. As the resources government spends on investments come from the economy, every dollar the government spends comes from the money that could be spent on investments by the private sector. When government increases spending to create temporary jobs, it crowds out the resources that could have been spent on exports or investments in the U.S. private sector. As a result, private investments fall sharply when government spending rise. The limited resources for private investments causes hiring from private sectors to decrease, and therefore the unemployment rate levels out or outstrides the job creation through government spending. In addition to that, government spending does not approach the root causation of globalization on structural unemployment. According to researcher James Schreck, stated in his report, low hiring is primarily a symptom of America's economic weakness, not its cause. Government spending creates temporary jobs, yet the underlying factors are not addressed. In the context of structural unemployment by globalization, the demand of workers shifted from America to overseas, causing the hiring of U.S. workers to decrease with the lack of demand. Economist Mark Thoma in his article also stated that it is primarily a demand problem. Instead of blindly creating jobs from government hiring, the U.S. government should begin with the roots of structural unemployment, which is the lack of desire in investments. To reduce the damage caused by the lack of investments, we can encourage the private sector investment through lowering business taxes. This encourages more business developments and allows private sectors to hire more for investments. 2 years after the Reagan tax reductions began to take effect, the equivalent of 11 million more Americans were employed in December 1984, including 10.6 million in the private sector and 460,000 in the government sector. Bottom line, 2 years of the recording spending and deficits has produced a 13 million job gaps when compared to the recovery from the economic crisis of early 1880s. Lower cooperative taxes also encourage business to invest in projects as after-tax return would exceed the cost of capital. Businesses can then respond to lower taxes by investing in new and expanded operations. This is how jobs should be created in order to support structural unemployment in the long term. However, limitations are still present in encouraging private investment through tax reduction, as tax reduction only provides better economic conditions for private sector investments. It is possible that private sectors choose not to invest with lower taxes, resulting in further wealth inequality in the U.S. Government spending and tax reduction should work together to reduce structural unemployment caused by globalization in the U.S. As studies from the professors from Harvard to London School of Economics, they pointed out the combination of spending restraint and reductions in tax rates are the best ways to stimulate economic growth and employment. Richard Nixon also stated that work ethic is ingrained in American culture, and with the work ethic, as structural unemployment takes place, it is important for the unemployed to stay competitive and keep their work ethic. Temporary jobs is therefore effective to support the unemployed. If structural transformations don't occur within a short period, It will turn into a long-term issue, causing the labor force to erode in both numbers and skills. The longer the people are unemployed, the higher the chance of them dropping out of the labor market permanently, which is costly to society. It is necessary to provide opportunities for workers to bridge the time while structural adjustments are underway with youthful employment. While tax reductions encourages private investments, government spending can provide temporary job opportunities, which remind the unemployed of their work ethic and avoid the erosion of workforce along with the negative consequences that come along with long-term unemployment. Job creation through the government spending should work together with tax reduction policies to support the U.S. workers and not allow more investments for private sectors. Government hiring should therefore simply be used to keep workers connected to the labor market with a job of any type. Relying on government to create jobs won't solve structural unemployment. A good balance must be sought on the use of resources, allowing temporary job opportunities from government spending and real job creation from private sector investments to support structural unemployment caused by globalization in the U.S. Thank you.
Christie, can you talk a little bit about how your research question evolved?
I started off with doing as a lot of the stimulus materials are about how technology has affected the job and how American workforce, how people lose their jobs. I started off with researching about like technology and how automation has affected the American workforce. But after a while, I started getting more and more deep into research. I found that globalization that caused structural unemployment is also a really important element that affected the US workforce. So I then switched into globalization and trying to find out how that affects the work ethic at first, but after a while of research, I can't really find any sources that directly said how the American workforce, the work ethic has been affected due to structural unemployment. So I have to change my topic into how it reduces the issue more than how it affects the American work ethic.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
If you had advice for people then researching a topic like this, what advice would you give them?
I would say start off with brainstorm a lot of the different topics, like possible solutions or possible pathways that you can go, and then pick a specific genre that you really are interested in or you find that needs attention on, and started going from that. And then you can go on to the online reliable resources for all different types of articles and go wide on the different genre type